You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to our first segment. I am Gil Martin in for Jon Chik, and we want to also take this opportunity to wish Jon congratulations on the birth of his child. So he's out on paternity leave, and Jon, congratulations. Best of luck to you and on your new family. So great news there.
Yes, the name that you all see on the screen, if you're watching on YouTube, is not Jon, but he is here in spirit with us. But of course, we do have Gil of Locked On Islanders here, and to preview this very interesting first round series we got here, Gil, between the Penguins and Rangers. First time they're playing in the playoffs in 6 years.
Yeah, and these are familiar playoff foes over the years, but first time in a while. And the big story coming out of Pittsburgh now, goaltending. Tristan Jarry not going to start the series. What can you tell us about his status, and how does this affect the Penguins going forward?
So for the last 2.5 weeks, he has been week to week, but today Mike Sullivan changed that. He's now day to day. So that's better news, but he's not going to be playing in games 1 and 2. He has the broken foot. He's been rehabbing off the ice, has not gotten back onto the ice yet. When the Penguins are almost several teams at this point that are dealing with really big goaltending problems. UC Saros looks to be out for the Predators against the Avalanche. Frederik Andersen is not going to be ready for the Hurricane series against the Bruins. Really bad timing for some of the best goaltenders in the league this year. So I don't know if he's going to play in this series yet. It's not looking good as of right now. If he does appear, I would assume it would be, a lot later in the series, maybe game 4, game 5, game 6, somewhere around those lines. But it's going to be Casey DeSmith to start. And, he's going to have to really play well if the Penguins want to win this series, because, they do come into this as the underdog, rightfully so. I know I read Dom's preview on The Athletic that has the Penguins as 56% favorites, even with Casey in there. But, with how the Penguins have played the last 2 or 3 weeks and how the Rangers have played during that time, I would still favor the Rangers. But, yeah, definitely the one injury that I don't think the Penguins could have afforded this time of year was to, a goaltender who was playing at almost a Vezina level for most of the season.
Talk to me about Casey DeSmith. How is he different style-wise from Tristan Jarry, and playoff experience-wise? What does he bring to the table, or what does he lack?
So, he has no playoff experience. That's the bad thing. But, he's a lot smaller of a goaltender, doesn't take up as much of the net. His movement has gotten a lot better as the season has gone on. I think, honestly, his overall play has gotten better as the season goes on. And, he's going to have to play the best hockey of his NHL career if the Penguins want to advance in this series. He was at a really rough place back in, mid-January, early February, where his save percentage was below 900, and there was talk that the Penguins were going to go out and get a veteran backup at the deadline. But, he turned his game around, rightfully so, and played well. He had, I think, over a 920 save percentage from March all the way till the end of the regular season, was saving, I think, 5 or 6 goals above expected. Actually playing like an adequate backup goaltender. Now, when your team needs you the most, you're going up against the best goaltender on the planet, the goalie who's going to not only win the Vezina Trophy, but could also potentially win the Hart Trophy, because he put the Rangers on his back this year and was that freaking good. It's crazy how they have a Favre to Rodgers kind of thing in net. For those that watch the NFL, just with Lundqvist retiring, and this basically a clone of him comes right in. So, the Rangers obviously have the goaltending edge in this series. No one is going to dispute that. Heck, even if Jarry was ready, they would still have the goaltending edge, even if Tristan was ready to go. But this is he's going to have to really, go full Dominic Hasek here or something if the Penguins want to advance here.
Do you think the changing goaltender will change the way the Penguins approach the series? Will they be more tight defensively? Will they try to, protect DeSmith, or are they just going to say, we're going to play our game and we go forward from there?
I think, honestly, Kris Letang talked about this to the media on Sunday and said, we play the same way in front of any goaltender, but I still think they need to tighten up regardless of who is in net. The Rangers, I thought, killed the Penguins during the 4 games with, in transition, off the rush. The Penguins had a lot of self-inflicted wounds against them that, No, that's not going to work in the playoffs. The Rangers are one of the best teams, in transition, and they use their speed to their advantage. The Penguins are not as fast of a team, I don't think, as the Rangers. And if that doesn't change in this first round series, the Penguins are going to get, losing maybe 5 games. I mean, that's the reality, I think, of the situation here. But they need to tighten up, no matter what, as I just said. I mean, they've usually been one of the best defensive teams in the league. I believe they've been top 5, top 10 for most of the season. Down the stretch, it faded a little bit. They started conceding a lot more chances, a lot more high danger chances, I should say. And that's not been the Penguins' bread and butter for how they've had success in the playoffs. When they're playing their game, they're getting to their forecheck, their expected goals rates high, they're finishing their chances, and they're not conceding a lot the other way. That's what the Penguins are going to have to do in this series if they want to win it, especially defensively, as the Rangers' top 6 is, it's not to be messed with. So in a way, I kind of want the Penguins to almost, play a little bit of low event hockey. I know that's not probably the thing that some fans want to hear because it's very boring to watch. It's not where the league is heading. But, with how the Penguins, again, played the Rangers in 3 of those 4 meetings, I think they're going to have to slow it down, play to their advantages and, see where the game takes it. And that includes being more stingy defensively.
Any ideas how the Penguins will try to slow down the top lines of Vinogad, Kreider, and Vetrano?
I mean, it's all a matter of, if you can get the Rangers, I feel like, to, really try and cycle into the zone, that's not their bread and butter. And, they're not bad at dumping the puck in. I think recovering their zone entries per 60 minutes, the recoveries, it's right around, I think, average. Last I checked before the trade deadline, it was well below average. They weren't really recovering any pucks that they sent into the zone. And, again, just not getting beat in transition is just such a key for me in this one. And, I really feel like the top line is going to see a healthy dose of Kris Letang and Brian Dumoulin. The Penguins need Brian Dumoulin to get back to his usual self. He has not been good this year. He's looked like a trade candidate, I think, at times. It's just that is how bad his level of play, has regressed. And with Kris Letang, career high 68 points, playing some of the finest hockey of his career, honestly, at both ends of the rink. I would have to think that Mike Sullivan is going to match up that pairing with the top line. And also, I would not be surprised if Sidney Crosby goes out against that line because, defensively, his impacts this year have been pretty decent. He's the older he's gotten, I think, the better defensively.
Talk to me about leadership. You guys have a lot of players with Stanley Cup experience who are kind of on the back 9 of their careers as far as, Crosby, Malkin, Letang, guys who may not have a lot of opportunities left to win a Stanley Cup. How are they approaching this series and what leadership do they add?
Yeah, I mean, they're not stupid. I think they've realized that this could be it. Kris Letang spoke to the media today, Sidney Crosby a couple of days ago, and they said, yeah, it's on the back of my mind. They don't really want to think about it, but they know that they've played for 16 years together. It's crazy. That's been almost 20 years now. And 2 of the 3 are free agents after this year. So they're not taking anything for granted. They want at least one more run together where they could potentially hoist the cup and right off into the sunset if one or both of them walks in free agency, even though I don't think both will go. And, I don't think you can ever count out a team that's led by those 3 in a playoff series. I know the vibes right now with the Penguins are not good. They come into this series as the underdog, rightfully so. But their leadership, it speaks for themselves. It speaks for itself, really. The 3 Stanley Cups. You've been to 4 Stanley Cup Finals. You've been to 5 Eastern Conference Finals. It's that the level of success these 3 have had is second to none. And I'm sure in that locker room, when one or all 3 of them speak up, all the other players are going to listen, just because they're the last 3 remaining players. Even going back to that 2009 Cup run, which was their first against the Detroit Red Wings. So I think Sid is going to try to take. They're all 3 of them. I think are going to try to take the series as personally as they can, especially Sid. He didn't play as well as he could have, I don't think, in those last 3 matchup against the Rangers. Down the stretch, his line was getting shut down a little bit more. He's going to want to try to prove some people wrong, I think, in this series. And honestly, just the core itself, I think they want to prove the doubters wrong, and they'll try to see what happens.
All right. When we come back, we will have Hunter asking me some questions about the Rangers. But first, We want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by your friends at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the trends and action. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right, we are back here on this special crossover edition of the Locked On Penguins and Locked On Rangers podcast. I'm Hunter Hodies. Gil Martin is on the other side filling in for Jon Chik. So, Gil, I know you are the Islanders host, but I also know that you watch a heavy dose of Rangers games. I mean, you have the book about the rivalry and all that. So, you know your stuff when it comes to the Rangers. I think, honestly, I think probably all starts with Igor Shesterkin. He was ridiculous this year, saved almost 30 goals above expected, almost a .940 save percentage. One of the best seasons we've seen from a goalie in the salary cap era. I mean, for as great as Henrik Lundqvist was, and he was, I still think he's the best goaltender of this generation. He did not have a season like this in New York. That was just this stats wise. How much of a challenge, I shouldn't even really be asking this, but I am. How much of a challenge do you think that does an opposing team face going up against him?
It is tough. I mean, you mentioned the numbers, the 2.07 goals against average, .935 save percentage, 6 shutouts. And when Shesterkin is on his game, it's just very, very difficult to try to beat him. I guess, the only advice I would give is try to go high on him. But even that is not easy. He is just so consistent and so good. Without Shesterkin, the Rangers are still a good team, but they're kind of fighting for a playoff berth rather than fighting for first place in the division heading into the last week of the season. He really is a difference maker. And, maybe the only knock against him is he doesn't have a lot of playoff experience at this point. And, maybe the Penguins have to hope that he's a little bit off his game as a result of the being in the playoffs, high stakes kind of a thing, but it won't be easy.
Hope is probably a good word for that. That's definitely, I think, what the Penguins are going to have to hope for. Just said it again. No pun intended there for that one. But no, talk to me also, Gil, about the Rangers power play. One of the best units in the league. Chris Kreider was a absolute menace on that unit. I mean, over half his goals came from the power play. And I think the special teams battle is going to be really intriguing in this series. Penguins penalty kill top 3 in the league, Rangers power play top 5 in the league. What makes the Rangers power play so deadly, even just outside of Kreider?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you got a great power play quarterback like Adam Fox, and he had 33 power play assists this season. They move the puck very well. They have speed. They'll come into the zone with speed and sort of make you chase the puck and be back on your heels. And there are just a lot of weapons on this power play. You mentioned Kreider. Zibanejad also had 15 power play goals. Artemi Panarin had 32 power play assists. The way they move the puck, the way they they like to kind of tire out the penalty killers with their passes, with their speed. It's not an easy power play to defense.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true in all aspects. The puck movement is always second to none. I mean, I saw them in 4 games, obviously, against the Penguins this year. And, that was obviously one of the toughest challenges for the Penguins penalty killers. And, they did mostly well, but they're going to really have to do even better in this series if they want to come out on top. The Rangers, they look like a different team after the deadline, Gil. This is a team, their underlying numbers before the deadline, shot attempts for, scoring chances for, expected goals, high danger in the lower half of the league. Those came up a good bit in the second half. They got Andrew Copp from Winnipeg, paid maybe a little bit of a high price. Doesn't matter. You're in a win now team. You're going to pay whatever it takes to go on a run. Frank Vatrano, noted Penguin killer, has 9 goals overall against the Penguins, 3 or 4 of them this year. So for those that are betting people, I would expect Frank Vatrano to have multiple goals in this series 100%. And then Tyler Mott, he's not going to be available to start this series, but also very good, reliable bottom six winger for the Rangers. He got injured, I think, in the last Penguins-Rangers matchup off of a hit. What have you noticed from their deadline acquisitions that just, have really helped them down the stretch?
They really, Vetrano stepped right in, and he's looking so strong. And you mentioned he's a Penguins killer, which makes the timing even better. But I think it just gave them more depth and more confidence up and down that lineup, that they knew that, they had players who can score on all of their lines. And there's no break. You fear that first line the most, but you go up and down this Rangers lineup now, especially after the trade deadline. There's no easy line that you say, oh, yeah, well, we can take a little break for the next 45 seconds because the fourth line is out there. There's a nice mix of skill, checking, physicality, and speed up and down this lineup. And it's just, I think, sort of taken the Rangers to another level after the trade deadline.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was when I think they really started to get, more results. They were in the thick of it with the Penguins even going into April, but then, once the teams started going in different directions, is when it really, that's just when I think they really turned it on. Last thing here I got for you about the Rangers, the kids, Lafreniere and Capo Caco, not the seasons that maybe a lot of fans were expecting. I mean, I know they're both former top 2 overall picks in the NHL draft, but I feel like they have, the opportunity here to really make an impact in the Stanley Cup playoffs and, really, just show why they were picked so high in the NHL draft. What are you looking forward to, with them going into the playoffs? Because it looks like both of them are finally healthy now. Kako has dealt with a lot of injuries this year. Lafreniere, he's been banged up a little bit at times, but still been relatively healthy. But, I think it's potentially time for their production to really show here.
Yeah, and I mean, look, Lafreniere had 19 goals in 79 games, so it's not like he was, terrible. But again, I think part of it has to do with how top-heavy the scoring is for this Rangers team, and Lafreniere didn't see a lot of power play time. For Kako, I think, health is the big issue for him. I mean, he was on pace for about 13, 14 goals if he played a complete 82-game season. This is an opportunity for them to sort of take that next step in their development. We know these are young players who the Rangers are counting on more in a year or two, perhaps, than they are right now. But, you have a big playoff, you step in and score a big goal, a game-winning goal, or take your game to the next level in the playoffs. That sets the table for confidence and for long-term success going forward. So if either one of those kids really step up and raise their game in this series, and if the Rangers win it beyond, that's a notch in their belt and a big step forward in their careers.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I'm going to be curious to see how they do play, and actually their first edition of the true Stanley Cup playoffs. Coming up in our final segment, we're going to get to some X Factor players that could determine the series, some key matchups, and both of us are going to give our respective predictions. Before we get to that, summer is coming, and with summer, you're going to need some food on the go. Built Bars are the perfect snack to take with you on family vacations. You can throw them in your bags, in your kids' backpacks. Make sure that everyone has a bar so you're filled with your summer adventures. The best part about Built Bars, they're healthy and delicious. No more sacrificing delicious food for health. With Built Bars, you can have both, and it's easy. Built Bar makes sure that there is something for everyone. Most Built Bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You can go to Built.com and get all of your favorites like banana cream pie, raspberry, double chocolate, and so many more. There's an offer right now. You can go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, we're back here on this special crossover edition of the Locked On Penguins and the Locked On Rangers podcast. I'm Hunter Hodies. Gil Martin is filling in for Jon Chik right now. So, Gil, I'll hand the floor over to you. Give me a couple of swing players that you think could definitely determine the outcome of this series and a couple of matchups to watch.
The player who I think might sort of subtly affect things for the Rangers is Ryan Strome. You know, he's sort of the second line guy, but he's a 20-goal scorer. He's a good passer. He'll contribute on the power play. And, you know, sometimes when you get into a playoff situation, they try to take away, you know, your best player, and you need your second or third line guys to sort of step up. I think, you know, if Ryan Strome has a good series, if he steps up, the Pittsburgh Penguins are probably in trouble.
For me, you know, I'll keep with that depth player, and I might go Evan Rodriguez here. You know, first half, Evan Rodriguez lit the world on fire, was someone that you probably would have wanted to run out into an open train in front of just to, I don't know, sacrifice yourself or something. But then the second half of the season came, and it all fell off a cliff. Had, I believe, 4 goals in his final 45 games, was not the same player. And now, you know, people were ready to walk him to the airport just to go to another team. But, you know, that final game of the regular season against the Blue Jackets, something started to turn around with him. Was getting a lot of quality looks, got his 19th goal of the season. Honestly, could have had a hat trick in that game if some of those other chances went in. If first round Evan Rodriguez comes back healthy, you know, he might be the best depth piece on, you know, from the bottom 6 from either side, in my opinion. He is a very important player to this team. He's currently on the 4th line right now, but he might be elevated up to the 3rd line or potentially in the top 6 at some point. I'm really curious to see how he does in this series. And, you know, my second player to watch isn't really on the ice. It's Mike Sullivan as the head coach. You know, what tactics is he going to, you know, have in place for Gerard Gallant in this series? What adjustments is he going to make after those 4 games? I understand, you know, the regular season, you throw it out the window, but still, you know, there was stuff that happened in those games that the Rangers are going to try to repeat, and it's up to the Penguins to not have that happen. And there's obviously new things that the Rangers are going to throw at the Penguins that they're going to have to adjust to. So how does Sullivan, who I think is usually one of the best tacticians in hockey, you know, how does he have his team prepared? And, you know, what's the game plan for them? Does he want them to play low event hockey? Does he really want to trap it down? You know, what's going to happen there? That's a big one, at least for me.
Yeah, and one other thing that I think is a key matchup, the Rangers power play, ranked 4th in the league, 25.2% success rate, going up against the Penguins PK, which is 3rd in the league, 84.4%. If the Penguins can slow down the Rangers power play, and not too many teams have been able to do it, that gives them a chance to pull off the upset. If the Rangers power play is getting 1 or 2 goals per game in this series, it may not last very long.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. You know, another one for me, you know, can Casey DeSmith really rise up to the occasion? You know, if Tristan Jarry was in this series, I feel very strongly that it would be a pick'em / coin flip. And, you know, maybe it is kind of in a way if DeSmith really elevates his game to that level that we saw from Tristan Jarry, you know, then it's definitely that the Penguins would have a shot. But, you know, until that happens, you know, until we see it potentially in game 1, I still would have to think the Rangers are a favorite here. But I want to see how he does when the stakes get highest. Is he going to wilt under pressure? Is he going to have a very potential Matt Murray moment from 2016? I'm not going to say he's going to take the reins for the next few years, but is he going to be like that young goaltender that really, you know, just plays well throughout the playoffs that can potentially give the Penguins a spark? If that's able to happen and they're able to get some saves and play well at 5v5, start to finish their chances, something that they really were not doing well during the season. The Penguins ranked in the bottom half of the league in finishing, which is last year they were number 1 in the league. But if that regresses a little bit too, you know, then I think the door really opens up there for Pittsburgh, to say the least.
So, Hunter, your pick for the series?
My pick, you know, it's funny. So 2018-19, they played the Islanders. I picked the Penguins to win. They lost. They played Montreal in the bubble a year later. I picked the Penguins to win. They lost. So fool me once, you know, shame on, you know, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times. I did it again. Well, you know, pick the Islanders. I picked the Penguins to win against the Islanders last year. The opposite happened. So I am a pretty superstitious person. But that said, I think the Rangers are too better of a team right now. I'm not going to fully drink the Kool-Aid with this. I think the Rangers are going to win this series. I currently have, I think it's going to go 7, but I think the Rangers win it at Madison Square Garden. I originally had it in 6, but I was like, are the Penguins really going to lose potentially their final home game of the Crosby, Malkin, Letang era on home ice? My gut, told me no. So I'm going to I'll take the Rangers, but in 7 pretty good games. I don't think the Penguins are going to wilt over. I don't think this is going to be a 4 to 5 game series. I think they are going to compete, but in the end, I think with how the Rangers are playing, with how the Penguins play down the stretch, it's going to be too much. And, maybe I'm doing it because I'm superstitious, but, in a way, I also feel like the Penguins I don't think they're going to advance to the second round.
I have to go with the Rangers. I'm going with 6. I know, the home ice thing, it's not a good look for those 3 venerable Penguins, all-time great Penguins, to lose possibly their final game on home ice. But to me, the goaltending is the big difference. Igor Shesterkin versus Casey DeSmith, and no offense to DeSmith, but at this point in his career, that's not a winning matchup for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Rangers also have home ice advantage throughout the series. I would even say 5, but I know how good Crosby, Malkin, and Letang are, and the rivalry between these two teams prevents me from saying it's going to be super one-sided. So to me, it's Rangers in 6.
Yeah, I mean, again, I would be pretty surprised. I would say, I shouldn't say pretty surprised. I would be surprised if the Penguins do win on this matchup, especially if DeSmith has to play the entire series. But this is why, as they say, Gil, you play the games, and we'll see what happens. But that wraps up this special crossover preview episode between the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. My Twitter is on the screen for YouTube. You can follow at Hunter Hodies. Gil's is not on the screen. So Gil, tell us where you can follow us on Twitter. I know John's is on the screen for our YouTube users at JCheck17, but Gil, tell everyone where they can follow you.
I am at Ice Wars NYR VSNYI. That's the name of the book I wrote, Ice Wars, about the Rangers-Islanders rivalry. So that's always fun to check out. And this should be a great series. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep, exactly. Game 1, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Sean McDonough and Ray Ferraro will be on the call on ESPN. And then the series will shift Thursday to TNT. And I'm not sure the commentators right now. Thank you all so much for making Locked On Penguins and Locked On Rangers your first listen every day for the Locked On Penguins podcast. I'll have a full game recap after game 1 on Tuesday. I believe Nick Zararis of the Upper Bowl GM podcast is going to come on, and we're going to recap that one as we did a couple of times throughout some of the regular season matchups. Now you can make your second listen Locked On NHL. From first-round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. You can hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So this one, thank you all so much for listening, and we'll be back on Tuesday.